everybody. It is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, and it's about a little after 10 p.m. and just wanted to, give you a rundown of my busy day today. First off, I had a ultrasound of my thyroid. My endocrinologist saw something she said was a little abnormal looking on a CT scan that I had last fall. And she wanted to get a better look at it, so she ordered the ultrasound. Or maybe it was in the beginning part of this year. I can't remember. There's been so much going on and so much stress. I lose track of days sometimes. But anyway, so that was first off at 9 a.m. Took all of 10 minutes. That was no problem. Then I had to get my tire pressure looked at the tire place where I got the tires and everything. And so they took out some of the air pressure because it was quite high. It says on the sticker inside my driver's side door that the tire pressure for both the front and the rear is supposed to be 30. And my tires were like at 42 and 38. So they had to take some of the air out. So they brought it down to 35 and 36, I believe, was the last tire pressure that I checked. So then I came home, took Shayla out, and she was not very happy with me that I had to go somewhere without her. She has severe separation anxiety. And I guess part of that comes from, we got her from a dog rescue in one of the northern suburbs. And I guess the previous owner got sick, and I guess she had Shayla and some other dog, and they were left to be on their own. They didn't have anybody to take care of them for quite a while. And then the woman's son, went to her house and tried to take care of his mom's two dogs, but he didn't really want to. So then he surrendered them to the rescue, and we got to adopt her and have her ever since August 19th of 2021. And and then Cassidy, my Black Lab Terrier girl, we lost her October, I want to say 19th of 2021, and then we lost Snowball October 20th of 2022. And Cassidy and Snowball grew up together. But, and then it was just our little princess here. Hey, Sheila. Hello. She's like, don't bother me, Mom. She's been just snuggling with me. And then after that, I got a call back from one of the roofing companies, because in my area here in the southwest suburbs, there's been a lot of hail and gusty wind storms and heavy downpours and tornado warnings, you name it. It's been happening. And the hailstorm that we had, it was, I forget, sometime in March. It was the largest hail that I've ever seen. And I've lived here since 1970. And I've never seen it that large. And apparently there were other suburbs that had even larger hail. So Mother Nature's been kind of brutal, It could always be worse, don't get me wrong, but it's like, okay, we've had enough. And it's been a little early to have all these like super major storms. But anyway, it is what it is, I guess. But so this company called me back, and I left a message yesterday at their main number, and then they routed out to the representative that handles my neck of the woods. And so I was pleased that they called back the following day. And then they said, oh, we can come out today. How's 2:30 sound? And I checked with my boyfriend, and he's like, sure, and so I wanted to make sure that my boyfriend was here, just to make sure that if there's any questions I don't remember to ask, then he's here to ask them. So anyway, they come out. It was the project manager for the area, his assistant, and then two other guys. But the two other guys went and knocked on doors, on my block to see if there's anybody else that, needed their roof inspected. So the two main guys, the project manager and his assistant guy, they're really nice, and they went up on the roof and they chalked some areas, took some pictures, and they made some measurements of the fascia and looked at, my gutters and my vinyl siding and all that. So, and they said that they're called public adjusters, or a public adjusting company too. They have that license with my state, and so they handle filing, calling in the claim, talking with the claims adjuster that's assigned to my claim, and then they come out here when the claims adjuster is going to do their inspection, just to make sure that they don't miss any of the damage, and therefore, deny the claim, or don't pay out as much as they should and replace what actually is damaged. So I really liked that, and my boyfriend was like, oh, well, let's think about it. I'm like, no, let's get this done, because I qualified to get solar panels on my roof through a state-funded program, and because I, am low income, disabled, blah, 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 I qualify for it. And so this is the time to get the solar panels. And they said I qualified. I've got a spot. They wanted to put the solar panels on last Monday. And it's like, whoa. We've had 3 major storms here. And, I have damage to my roof. And I want to make sure that my roof is stable before the solar panels are put on. So they said, okay, let us know when you, are getting the roof done, when it's done, and we'll hold your spot. And, so I'm still worried that, there's not going to be enough panels or whatever by the time they get to me. Because there's only, allotment of so many to be, put on people's roofs. And I'm fearful that I'm going to lose my spot, or there's not going to be enough solar panels to put on my roof. I just have a 1-story ranch, but I want to stay in this house. I want to make improvements on this house as I can, when I'm financially able to. And, that's what my parents would want me to do. My dad was a shift worker. He worked for a processing plant, that did paint, they did spices, they did, different tea powders, all kinds of stuff, and oils and stuff, cooking oils and whatnot. And so he worked a rotating shift, till I think he worked there 27 and a half years. He would have continued to keep working, but another company bought the company. It was a Dutch company, and they bought it, and they wanted to get rid of all the, top paying people, and my dad was what they say is a A operator. There was an A operator and a B operator. My dad was an A operator, so he was at the higher end of the pay scale. So they, pushed my dad out, as well as other people that had been with the company for a long time, and then hired people at a lower wage. That's how corporate America does it, So my dad was kind of depressed after that because, like many of us, we identify ourselves according to the job that we do. Like a teacher, it's hard for them to retire, or a nurse, or a doctor, or, a farmer, or a retail manager, any profession, we tend to identify ourselves as that. And so when you can't do that job anymore, it really crushes your soul. I know when I became very, very sick and could not work anymore, it really depressed me a lot. And because I've always been a hard worker too. I learned that work ethic from my father and my mother, And so when my medical issues took over my life, it really, really upset me. And a lot of times I feel like a failure. So I just wish that I could do so many other things to make this house, a home and nice and everything. And so the next thing is the roof and the fascia and whatever else gets approved for the claim. So if you could please, if you pray, if you could say a prayer, or just send positive vibes my way so that I can keep this house, nice, and keep it nice for little Shayla here. Little camera shy Shayla. Hello. Hello, Shayla. She is snoozing. Hi. Hello. Hello. Hi, Shayla. We didn't get to go for any car ride today. Sometimes I take her for a short little jaunt, and then there's an Andy's ice cream place, and I get 1 scoop of vanilla for me, and then she gets her free puppy cone of vanilla. And she really likes it, but we don't get that too often, and, just once in a while we do that as a little adventure. But, especially now that gas keeps going up, it's right about at like $4.99 a gallon here in my neck of the woods. So, I just thought I'd share what went on today on my Cinco de Mayo. Hope everybody had a great day, and hope you have a great night. And thank you for checking out my videos and stuff. And I just appreciate your feedback and, your comments and stuff. It really shocked me when one of the major anti-Scientology streamers that I've been watching for 2.5 years now, it's called The Defender of Ants, and then he changed his YouTube channel name to The Lord of the Gadflies. He's going up against the cult of Scientology in LA, and they're trying to get him on 6 felonies and 16 misdemeanors for saying that Scientology is a cult. They're trying to say that it's hate speech, which it is not. We have what's called the First Amendment, and Scientology wants to control what people are allowed to say, and that is not their right to do. And so send positive vibes towards the Lord of the Gadflies. Check out his YouTube channel. Also, Kirby's mom. She is a very she's a very passionate activist in Dublin, Ireland, against Scientology, against some of the things that the Irish government is doing, and stuff like that. So check her out. Then there's also MD Media 18, and he's in California as well, and he went to the Blue Building on L. Ron Hubbard Way and documented what was going on there. And he also does other things, and so he's got some really good videos. He also goes to car shows. He also documented the wildfires that were in California. And so check him out as well. And just wanted to also give a shout out to some other YouTube chatters that I am becoming more familiar with. Adrian, Pseudonym, DT, GM Flower, Tree Hugging Buddhist, Helleborg, and Hippie Chick 69. So just a shout out to all you guys. But I just wish I had more money, to get everything done that I would like to get done. But, it'll get done little by little, inch by inch, as they say. So I'm not looking for any, money or donations from people. I'm not monetized. I just started doing my YouTube channel. But, it's just rough for hardworking people, now more than ever, it seems. So, I just have to remember to breathe and get enough sleep and stay on some type of a schedule and not let the depression creep in. I have to try to, stay positive and take care of little Shayla here. Because I tell you what, if it wasn't for Shayla, I probably wouldn't be here. Because when Snowball and Cassidy had to go to the Rainbow Bridge, it was very, very hard. Very hard. Cassidy was with me for 16 years. And Snowball was with me for 17 and a half years. And they both were here after my dad had a heart attack. He had a heart attack here at the house. And then my mom, passed away suddenly, unexpectedly at Loyola Hospital. A resident doctor forced a feeding tube down my mom's throat, even though she failed 2 swallowing tests. Apparently you have to be able to swallow as they're putting in the chest tube down your throat. And they had dehydrated her in the ER and everything. We were in the ER for like 12 hours before they put her into a room. Then at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, they finally put her into a room. And they wouldn't let her have anything because they're like, oh, we might have to run tests, so she can't have anything. I was sneaking her water, ice chips and stuff, and I think I even had her drink like, you know, half a can of 7-Up or Sprite or something, but I wasn't supposed to do that, but it's like, she's drying out, you know. So, anyway, they had dehydrated her, and so by the time they got my mom up into a room, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I told them before I left to come back home to take care of my first dog that I had, Cuddles. Cuddles was my first dog, and she was at home the entire time that we were, that I was gone at the hospital. And because I don't have any brothers or sisters, that could have helped me, or anything. It was just me. And I had to stay with my mom. So the next shift change for the nurses, came on duty, and talked with that nurse and told her, my mom has sleep apnea. Do you guys have a CPAP machine? And they called around and checked, and nope, they don't have one. They didn't have a BiPAP machine. So they said, oh, well, she'll be okay. She'll be okay. And I was like, I don't think so. And I said, do not lay her bed flat, because that tends to cut off her breathing and she has difficulty. She needs to sleep on an incline. So I didn't feel right, but I was like, I have to go home. I have to feed Cuddles. I have to take her out if she didn't already have accidents in the house. But she did not have any potty accidents. So she was whining and crying, when I came home. But, so I couldn't really sleep. I tried to sleep, but then something woke me up at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I called the nurse's station to check and see how things were going with my mom. And they said that she was moved to the telemetry floor. And I said, why is that? Oh, well, she was having problems breathing, and so they wanted to monitor her more closely. And I asked them, I said, did they put my mother's bed flat? Or did they leave it on an incline as I had instructed before I left? And no one could answer that question. Well, that tells me that they put her bed flat, and that's when she started having problems. So they moved her to the telemetry floor. So I got a few hours of sleep. I took a shower, took care of Cuddles, gave her a little bit of extra, food and water just in case, and took her for a nice long walk. And then I went back to the hospital. This is now probably like 8:30 a.m. And she's not on the telemetry floor. I go to the room number that they told me. She's not there. They said, oh, she was moved to ICU because she was having breathing distress. I'm like, what? And I said, did they ever locate any CPAP or BiPAP machine? Because she has obstructive sleep apnea, as I told, the nurse when she was admitted. And they said, no, we didn't have anything available. I said, well, why didn't somebody call me? I could have brought her CPAP from home, So anyway, a whole bunch of things were just mishandled all the way around. And so my mom is in, well, the hospital there calls it MICU. So she's in the MICU, and she is, very, very fatigued, very lethargic. She looked pale in her face, and she could barely talk. And I said, can she have any type of liquids now? Please, people. And they checked with the doctor team. I guess there's a team of doctors. There's residents and then the head doctor. And they said, okay, we'll give her IV fluids. Okay, so they do an IV fluid thing. Then they said, oh, we need to do a feeding tube, but we need to have a swallowing test done. So they had the person that does that come in, and my mom failed the swallowing test twice. So they said we can't do a feeding tube. Well, an inpatient resident doctor that was on my mom's team was hell-bent on putting a feeding tube in. And so he, forced it in. I don't know if he checked with the head doctor or not, or if he made the decision, but the other resident doctors, they looked very apprehensive about it, but they didn't say anything. So this guy goes to insert the feeding tube, and I should preface this with, I had just had my left ankle surgery because there was a torn tendon and a bone spur, and I had to have the surgery because my ankle was, like the surgeon said, was basically hanging by a thread. And if that would have completely torn, I would have had no motion in my foot. So while I was getting the foot surgery and then connected to a continuous 24-hour ice water flow machine to keep the swelling down, my mom's sister came in from out of state to be with my mom. And then my mom's other sister, who lived right near the hospital, got an ounce of compassion in her heart to come there too, to check on my mom. So anyway, I had the left ankle surgery. I'm connected to the thing. After 4 days, I could, then get off the ice machine thing. And then I had a neighbor drive me to the hospital. They had me in a wheelchair. When they went to go insert the feeding tube down my mom's throat, they wheeled me out into the hallway and pulled the curtain. Then they go to proceed to insert the feeding tube. And instantly, my mom yelled out. And it did not sound good at all. And then there's a whole bunch of scurrying around, and other, people in the MICU, doctors, nurses, whatever, came to my mom's room, and I guess they paged the head doctor, and then one of the nurses or nurses' aides wheeled me down the hallway to where it was a family waiting room, and they wouldn't tell me what was going on. I knew it wasn't good. And it wasn't. And the stupid resident doctor that did the damage came to the room there and had me sign a form so they could give my mom blood, because I guess she lost a lot of blood. And he mentioned how, he said, you're a very good daughter for taking care of your mom. He said that he was taking care of his aging father, and he has to drive like an hour one way, and so he's doing that while he's doing his residency, and blah blah blah. So it's like, this guy is not getting a lot of sleep. He made a hasty decision, and then he was trying to butter me up by saying, oh, you're a very good daughter, blah blah blah. So all the while, I'm freaking out in my head, but I'm trying to keep calm, because if you don't, then they have security escort you out. Which I found out later on. So anyway, he has me sign these forms, and then they made the decision that she didn't qualify to be in the MICU, so they moved her to a regular room. And they have 2 patients per room. So they moved my mom out of the MICU. And, they said it was because my mom had DNR. She did not want to be hooked up to machines indefinitely. And so she had the do not resuscitate orders. And so because my mom was a DNR, they didn't really want to fix the fatal damage that they caused to my mother. And so they moved my mom to a 2-bedroom, and the nurses in that wing were like running around like chickens without heads. They must have been very short-staffed. They looked very stressed out. And the head nurse for that wing was very, put it nicely, she was rude to me. Anyway, I'm going on and on. I'm sorry. So anyway, this is right around Christmas time, okay? I had taken my mom to the ER per her new primary doctor. I was taking my mom to this new primary doctor for the first office appointment. We were running late, and there was a lot of snow and ice, and I had problems helping my mom take a shower and get dressed, everything. So we were running a little late. I called while we were in the car, and that primary doctor's office said, just take your time, bring her in slowly, blah, blah, blah. But then they asked me, what her symptoms were. And what initially was the problem was she had swelling of her legs. The water would build up in her legs, called edema, I think is what the medical term is. And my mom was on Medicaid. And at first I was able to keep up with the sores on her legs by taking her to the wound care clinic at the hospital, nearby. And then Medicaid said, we're not paying for any more, so that's it. And so I tried to keep up with it as best as I could, but I didn't have the right kind of medicated bandages and stuff that the wound care clinic had, and it got to be, really bad. So her previous primary care doctor wanted me to put my mom in a nursing home. And I said, I'm not going to do that, And my mom had just turned 65, And then she was on, Medicaid. Finally, we were on Medicaid. And so I had a falling out with that primary care doctor. So then I looked in the thing and got another primary care doctor through Loyola. And it was an outlet, office or whatever you call it. Anyway, so we're running late. They put me on hold. I guess they give the symptoms to this primary doctor. She gets on the phone and asks me, why am I bringing my mom in? Blah, blah, blah. Told her the whole situation. She's like, oh, take your mom straight to the ER. Do not bring her here. You need to take your mom to the ER. So I got on the expressway and went out to Loyola, to the ER there, and that was on December 19th, I want to say. And this is years ago, by the way. This is back in 2006. So she's at Loyola starting on December 19th. And all these mistakes happened, okay? And then my mom passed away on December 30th. So, and they didn't even handle that right either. They didn't tell me that they were moving my mom to what's deemed the quote-unquote death floor. Okay, so my aunt Gina's with me. They had my mom, in a gurney. We go in the elevator and we go up to the 5th floor, and we get off the elevator, and there's all these gurneys with empty body bags and stuff on both sides of the hallway. And it didn't dawn on me because I was just so overwhelmed and worried about my mom and everything. And so it didn't dawn on me at first where they put us. But it was the death floor. It's where, they wait for the patient to die, basically. They keep them, out of pain with morphine, apparently, through an IV until the patient passes away. So, my Aunt Jean said, we should start planning your mom's funeral and what you would want done, for the mass. And so we called my church, and my mom was a devout Catholic, and she prayed the rosary with a small group of lady friends of hers, and once a week, and so she was a very devout Catholic. So their funeral mass coordinator person, called me and said this is what they normally select for readings, and here's some options for the processional and communion, hymn, and the recessional song and all that. So my Aunt Jean and I are going through that and planning what we think my mom would like. And just after we picked the recessional hymn, which I believe is the hymn On Eagle's Wings, because my mom really liked that song. And we selected that song for the recessional, and she just passed away at that moment. And then I guess one of the nurses from the nurses station came in, and she said, your mom has passed. So we have the monitor at the nurses station, and your mom has passed away. So it was very hard, because my mom was my best friend, and she was the one person that really cared about me. Sorry. And so she had just turned 65 and gotten onto Medicaid and Medicare. And they didn't really do anything to fix the problem that they caused. After, that resident doctor punctured the hole in her lung, she filled up with blood and fluid and everything. And then they said because she was a DNR, the best that they could do is have the, I forget what it's called. The pulmonologist person or something like that. I guess they can take a tube and suck out that stuff. Sorry if this is TMI or trigger warning. I should have said that in the beginning. Trigger warning. But they would only do it once a shift. Well, they should have been doing it like every 20 minutes. and they should have patched up the hole that they caused. And then one of the Asian resident doctors, as they were taking my mom somewhere, I forget what, but he took me aside and he said, because my mom failed 2 swallowing tests, they should have had the ultrasound help guide them when they were, to insert the feeding tube. And I said, well, why didn't they do that then? And then I guess they saw that this, resident doctor from their team was talking to me, and they like whisked him away right away, and he didn't get to answer my question. And then, get this, then they moved that resident doctor off that floor somewhere else so that I couldn't ask him, because I went there to the floor and I wanted to talk to him and ask him why he did what he did. And they moved him. Well, you want to know where they moved him? They moved him across the way to the next building, which is a VA hospital, Hines Hospital. My mother's brother was a captain in the Air Force, and he was at Hines Hospital. 6 months goes by, approximately, give or take, and I go to visit my Uncle Jimmy there, and guess who walks into my Uncle Jimmy's room? The resident doctor that essentially killed my mother. And he looks right at me, this resident doctor, and he goes, "You look awfully familiar." And I almost said what I really wanted to say to him, but I didn't want to upset my Uncle Jimmy. So I said, "Oh, I must have one of those, common faces or whatever, So then after I get done with visiting my Uncle Jimmy, I went out into the parking lot, because at Hines Hospital, at that time anyway, your cell phone wouldn't work in the hospital. They wouldn't let you use a cell phone. So I get out to the parking lot and I call my Aunt Linda, my mom's other younger sister, and she had power of attorney for my Uncle Jimmy. And I told her on her answering machine, because she never picked up. She screens. So I left a message that I said, the doctor that killed my mother at Loyola, the resident doctor, is on Uncle Jimmy's doctor team. I said, you have to get Uncle Jimmy either moved to a different floor or have that doctor taken off, because he'll do the same thing to Uncle Jimmy. The guy is reckless, and he makes, poor, hasty, fatal decisions. So she worked it somehow. I don't know how she did it, but she got that doctor off of my Uncle Jimmy's team. And so that's that. But I was going through Facebook the other day. Guess who I found on Facebook? The resident doctor. And it's him and his wife with big, huge smiles on their face, and they're cheek to cheek, happy-go-lucky. And I was like, oh my God. So that's what has sparked this, because I found this resident doctor. He's probably a doctor by now, because this was back in 2006 when he killed my mom. But yeah, so this is what I guess has triggered all of these emotions to come back to the surface again. There's certain hard days, like my parents' wedding anniversary, and then their birthdays, and then when they passed away, those are all hard days for me. You know, Christmas is forever ruined ever since I lost my mom. People are always like, oh, it's the most wonderful time of the year, da 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 da. I was like, not for me. Not for me. So, anyway, the one thing that I learned from that whole horrible situation was whenever you have a family member or a friend in the hospital, have someone there with a cell phone and take a video and watch everything that they do. So you have evidence. So that's my FYI for everybody. And sorry again for getting all emotional. And I didn't mean to ramble on this long. Oh geez, this is like my longest video yet. Wow. But take care everyone, and thank you again for your support, your thoughts, your positive thoughts and vibes and prayers, and your feedback. So enjoy your day, enjoy your night, and be happy, healthy, and hope everybody is safe. Right, peace to all of you. Bye.